Good afternoon. It is Randy Byrd, and I'm here for another exciting episode of Tuesday Titans Live. This is a little passion project that started out just as a way to highlight the Titans in respective industries. It goes across several boundaries. It's not just in real estate. It's not lending. It's not, in that, but all business entrepreneurs ultimately, and people that want to be in that entrepreneur mindset and thought process, kind of the thought leaders of entrepreneurs and business owners. And today is no exception. I have literally one of my favorite guys when I think of real estate, flipping, investing, Brian Burke with Praxis Capital. I'm going to give you a little bio on this guy, although I could spend 10 to 15 minutes on his bio from what I know. But Brian's the president and CEO of Praxis Capital Incorporated, a vertically integrated real estate private equity investment firm. That's pretty fancy, Brian. Brian has now acquired over $500 million with a B dollars worth of real estate over a 30-year career, including over 3,000 multifamily units. We're going to talk about that today specifically, and more than 700 single-family homes. I remember him back in the day selling about 100 homes a year in the little Redding, California community that I was a real estate agent in. And there's a story how Brian and I met. But with that, with the assistance of proprietary software that he wrote himself, Brian has now subdivided land, built homes, constructed self-storage facilities, and really prefers the reposition of existing multifamily properties. And with that, I'd like to invite Brian Burke to the show, Tuesday Titans Live. Brian, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Randy. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Dude, I'm really excited to have you. And just before we went live, we were catching up, and you kind of threw a bombshell on me that I honestly forgot about. We met at Al Naccione's, Remax or Redding. I was working for Al, looking at taking over that particular business, and was working within a team leader capacity. And you were working with Brian, and I was hands off. I wasn't even allowed to answer the phone if Brian was calling. I remember that. You don't, but I remember that. But, Al worked with you back in, that would have been, you started in 1989 in your flipping and in your business, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think I started up in the Redding area, like around 2000 or 2001, somewhere around there.
That makes sense, because I moved to Redding in 2003 and started with Al and Pat Naccione shortly after that at Remax, and you were working with them at that time. And you told me that I asked you right before the show, just doing a little due diligence, how you got interested in started in your commercial multifamily background. And you almost knocked me out of my chair by telling me Al Naccione sold you your first property in 2002.
Isn't that something? It's incredible to think about it. I tell this story a lot because one of the most common questions I get when I'm on podcasts is people ask how you got started. And then, it always leads to how did you get started in multifamily? And, I always tell the story about how, I was flipping single family homes, and I had a real estate agent that was selling the homes for me when we renovated them. And he was a CCIM. And I remember going into his office one day, and I wanted to do a 1031 exchange. I had 2 rental houses I wanted to sell, and I wanted to buy an income property. But I said, Al, I have no idea what to look for on an income property. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't understand the income statement. And, you're a CCIM. What do you have to say? And he sat me down in his office and ran me through the whole thing about how to read an income statement on multifamily property. And, several months later, ultimately, he ended up selling me my first multifamily property in that 1031 exchange. And it all started from there.
Dude, that is so crazy. So I was a protege of Al and Pat, and to this day, I still brag about how brilliant he is. And really, it's Pat. Sorry, Al, but it's Pat. But really, he is a brilliant, brilliant mind when it comes to real estate investing and the strategies of the CCIM. And he taught me APODs. And all of a sudden, when I started using the word APOD to other agents that didn't know what it was, it gave me like a feeling of superiority. But it was Al that did that for me too. So I'm really kind of taken that was your journey, and that I was in a small part of that during that time period. And I've been a big fan of yours. Make no mistake. I'm a big fan of Tanya's up in Redding. She is an absolute class act. And, I didn't even put it together that you and I knew each other in that capacity until later. I was talking to Tanya, and then she goes, well, Brian's from Santa Rosa. I'm like, wait, I'm from Santa Rosa. I kind of know a lot of people. And lo and behold, we ended up, our circles were a lot closer than we thought. And, we went to lunch, I don't know, it was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
But, I just admired your path, and I've bought houses from you without even knowing it was you.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even know I sold them to you.
I know. I've tracked in different flipping things before I knew that they were in your circle,
Interesting.
And I remember talking to Tanya about staging. And so what happens when I talk to her about staging, then I go, well, shit, I know Brian. And then that was him. And then that was her. And so this whole circle kind of came back full circle. So it's really kind of an emotional appreciation for me that I get to have you on the show. And, you have an absolute amount of knowledge to share with people. And I don't even know how to structure that into a valuable content that they could take away from this. But you have quickly become somebody that I look up to in that particular space and category is, wow, you're doing some amazing stuff. Tell us about some of the current projects. I know you just closed on one, if I'm not mistaken. And talk us through the ones that you can talk about right now.
Yeah, we did actually. We're still doing a little bit of house flipping. In fact, we're still doing some house flipping back up in Redding, where we kind of built this business to begin with way back in the day. And
right.
Tanya's still my agent up there selling properties for us and doing a fantastic job. And so we still have that element of our business. And we even do flipping in Sacramento and in Solano County and in a few other areas. So we've kind of got that arm of the business going at the same time as our multifamily operation. It's really the multifamily operation is kind of on a dollar volume basis where all of our activity is, even though the flipping on a transaction basis outnumbers it because
right.
It's easy to do a lot of transaction volume on small dollar houses. But
right.
when you're doing multifamily, our most recent closings here, they were about $40 million between the two of them. We just closed on around 421, I think it's 421 units or somewhere around that, somewhere around that range, on two properties in the Atlanta, Georgia market. So really what we're doing now is we're buying value add Class B and C multifamily properties, generally 100 units and up, usually kind of between 10 and $30 million per property, all across the U.S.
Wow, you're using big words already, Brian. And the thing is like, I remember back, we talked about that time frame of when you started buying multifamily. So tell me, what was your first set of multifamily? Like, what did that look like?
My first multifamily was a 16-unit apartment building in Redding, California. And it was built in the 1960s. It was an individual guy that owned it. And I bought it in that 1031 exchange. I sold two rental homes, used the proceeds from the two rental homes to buy the apartment complex, but I didn't have enough for the whole down payment. So, Al connected me with a lender up there that did the loan. And then he somehow convinced the seller to carry back a 10% second note so that I had the balance of the down payment. So then about a couple of years later, I had renovated some of the apartment units and done some work to the outside to improve the curb appeal, brought the rents up, streamlined the income some, and Al connected me with another lender that did a refinance, and I was able to put a permanent loan on that property that took the seller's carryback out, and I was all on my own from that point forward. That was my very first one. And funny story, I literally just sold that property 2 years ago, so I think I owned it for like 16 or 17 years.
What street was it on?
It was on West Street, right behind, kind of like over by the river.
I could freak you out, and I think I can almost name the address because I have a freakish thing about remembering addresses of properties we had listed back then. But I know that property very well. I remember which one you're talking about. So, what did that look like back in 2002, 2003 when you buy your first 16 unit? What kind of nightmares, what kind of headaches, what kind of joyous things? Walk me through what that looks like, and the listeners, so they can understand, what that piece looks like. And I want to talk about financing because that was a pretty big statement you made there.
Yeah. So, the biggest challenges really all revolved around property management. And it was really challenging. At first I had a property management company that was overseeing it. And it was actually the seller's property management company. I just kept it with the same management company.
Right.
And, that
I'm not going to name names.
No, not naming names. So, that relationship was a little challenging. It was kind of difficult for me to navigate. And this was my first kind of bigger property. And,
Right.
Things weren't going exactly the way I felt they needed to go. And, when it's a 16 unit and that's the biggest thing you've ever invested in, you really pay a lot of attention to it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right. So I was paying a ton of attention to it, and it just wasn't quite going the way I wanted. So I decided that it would be better if I took the property over myself and hired an on-site manager to manage it. Basically, give them a free apartment and let them manage the property. And man, that was probably in retrospect the worst decision I ever made, but from a personal development standpoint, probably the best decision I ever made. And,
Interesting.
And the reason that it has kind of that, complete binary opposing thing is it was the worst decision because you really got to have professional management. And this was the stake, this is the blind leading the blind. This is my first multifamily property, and I'm hiring someone in there that's, managed some other buildings before for other owners.
Maybe a good maintenance guy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's about it. Right. And at the same time, it was the best decision because it really taught me, how to navigate a lot of challenges. And, there's no better way to learn how to swim than to be thrown into a tank of sharks.
Absolutely. But you do get your butt bit sometimes.
Yeah, I did, and it was really difficult. I mean, it was surprising to me how challenging it was to hire for that position and bring someone in. It was really, really difficult to find the right person. And it took us about 3 different people before we found the right person. And then ultimately, even at that, I finally realized that I couldn't provide the required level of individual oversight to make sure that person did things exactly the way they needed to be. And I ultimately ended up bringing a professional management company back in to manage it again. So,
gotcha.
I learned full circle. It was a really good lesson.
So if we were having drinks and I was buying a 16 unit, what would the 2 or 3 takeaways be from your experience on that? Because I know I have a lot of people that are going to watch the show. Maybe our whole tens of fans will watch this, but kidding. We've had some really good traction. But the thing is, we're going to have a lot of agents, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of wantrepreneurs, people that want to get in that space. So what's 2 or 3 takeaways you would tell me as a brother to look out for, take advantage of, whatever in that experience?
I'd say, first of all, the best decision you can make is to scale. And, if you can get, it's like Monopoly, right? You get the 4 houses and you trade in for the hotel,
Yeah.
This is the same thing. It really does make sense to scale. And if you can grow to larger properties, and the sooner you can grow to larger properties, the more you can scale your investment portfolio and your skill set as a real estate investor. So that's kind of step 1.
Okay.
Step 2 is, as soon as you do scale up to something like that, get out of those smaller buildings as fast as you can to go even bigger, because there's nothing that's more difficult to manage than that, call it like 10 unit to
in between
75 units. That 10 to 75 is really, really challenging because, under 10, it's like single family, there's a lot of really good managers that can deal with that. You get over 10, you can't quite, there's not enough revenue to quite afford like the top tier management teams that really have it together. And, there are some good ones out there, but man, they're hard to find. When you get up over, kind of that 75 to 100 units, and when you get into 200 units, you really start being able to have enough revenue to be able to compensate top tier teams. So grow as fast as you can and grow as big as you can.
Okay. So now explain people how they do that. Explain the process. I mean, what's the number one obstacle? Is it financing? Is it, the financial piece of it? Or is it finding the properties at the right spreads and cap rates and things? What do you think is the challenge for people?
It's always different challenge at different times. So when it's easy to find money, it's hard to find property. And when it's easy to find property, it's hard to find money.
Totally. They never align, it seems.
They never align. So there's always a challenge, that's for sure.
Okay.
But I think for most people, it really comes down to capital. I mean, capital is the big thing. If you're, I always believed in prove the concept using your own resources. So that means, buy something like I did. I did a 1031 exchange from my own properties into my own 16 unit to learn the ropes, screw up, make all the mistakes, refine the whole process, so that later I could attract capital from other investors that would invest with me in larger deals. And that's how we've been able to acquire $500 million in real estate. It didn't come out of my pocket. So, this whole thing starts basically from my very first real estate investment was literally a mobile home that I bought with no money down using a finance company for the main loan, and the seller carried back the entire down payment when I was like 20 years old. That was my very first real estate investment. And I had nothing. I had no money of my own. So from that, then it was flipping houses. And I literally was cash advancing credit cards to get houses that I could flip, buy and fix up and resell. And so that started to get me like a little bit of revenue that I could use to start buying a couple rental homes. And then after a while, the rental homes would appreciate in value. And then I 1031 out of the rental homes into my 16 unit building. And then, I take the track record and skills that I've built from several flip houses, several rental houses, a 16 unit building, and I show other people, this is what I've done. I've invested in all these things. I've produced these results. I can do that with you too. You can invest with me, and we'll buy real estate. And so then I bought a 60 unit building, and then it was a 136 unit building, and then it was a 200, and now 3,000 units later. It kind of all starts from that little seed. So when I'm talking to you, my brother, and saying like, hey, this is what you got to do, I say, you have to move forward. You have to put one foot in front of the other, no matter how small that step seems like it's going to be. Every one of those steps is 1 inch closer to where you're trying to go. And if you don't take the step, regardless of how hard it is or rocky the surface is, if you don't take that step, you're not moving anywhere near your destination.
I love that. And this is just like we're having lunch together, sitting across the table. So that's really the hope of my show, is to have people be able to like eavesdrop and just put an ear on the table of a conversation, a high level conversation like this that I get to have with you today. So thank you for being that person and allowing us to do that today.
Yeah,
so what's your like bread and butter now? I mean, what turns you on when you look at projects? What really is kind of like within your laser sights?
Yeah, our kind of bread and butter property would be something that's 150 to 300 units, built between 1980 and 2019, somewhere in the eastern half of the U.S., most likely in the Southeast generally, priced somewhere in the $10 to $30 million price point. That has some kind of a value add component. What I mean by that is there needs to be something that we can actually do to improve the property or the property's income stream. And of course, by improving the property, we intend to improve the income stream. But sometimes we don't have to even improve the property. We can improve the income stream just by making management changes. So we're always looking for some tangible story that allows us to grow the value of that property by something we actually do, not just relying on the market to do it for us.
I love that. And you say do you have an investment group that you work with, or do you just still work alone on some things? What does it look like?
Gosh, when I started, Randy, I was the Lone Ranger. And when we first met, it was all 100% me. I was working out of a home office. My first hire was a bookkeeper to kind of help me like pay the bills. My second hire was Tanya up in Reading to sell homes for me, and
which is amazing. By the way,
I know how many years back was that. Our team eventually grew. We at one point had over 50 people.
Wow.
And
like searchers and people running auctions and everything.
Yeah, we had people going to auctions. We had our own construction company that was doing all of our renovations.
That's right. That's right.
We had the whole engine was completely built. And that was like when the economy tanked in 08, in that period right there from 08 to 13, we were literally doing 100 homes a year across about a 12 county area. And, so we had all this stuff going on. And then we collected about 120 single family rental homes in the San Francisco Bay Area at the very bottom of the market. We sold out of all that by now. And, so we had all these different things going on. And then when the single family opportunity started to wane, it was about 2013, 14, that's the foreclosures were kind of going away.
Right.
There wasn't as much opportunity. We started sliding out of that more. We had to cut back on staff a lot. We ended up bottoming out about 7 people.
Okay.
And then the multifamily business started to grow. And, the multifamily business, since the transactional volume isn't all that hefty,
Right.
we didn't need to add a lot of headcount. So,
True.
we managed to get by with about 7 people. And then 3 years ago, we really flipped the switch, and it really changed the whole course of our business. I brought on 3 new executives to the company. These guys brought 100,000 units of multifamily experience with them, that they had worked with large institutional multifamily players, the big names that you'd recognize all over the country. They came and joined Praxis Capital, and we just grew this thing like a weed. And now we've created our own property management company to manage all our assets. We're well over 50 employees now on that side of the business. We have our own construction and renovation division that handles all of our apartment renovations. And, we've really substantially grown yet again. So
that's so crazy. I remember reconnecting with you probably maybe 3 years ago, realistically, I think, when we had lunch. But, I saw you in the national news about your acquisitions in Atlanta. I think is where one of the first ones were that I recognized. And I was like, I was quietly going, all right, that's badass. This guy's a baller, man. I got to reconnect with him. And then I've just watched and been more impressed by your business workings and dealings from that point forward. And that's why I wanted to get you on the show, because, again, this is a passion project of mine, but I know there's going to be people that are impacted by the words and by the direction and by the advice that you give on this particular show. Maybe a little different than your normal podcast that you're doing. I didn't realize that you're that sought after for podcast. And, I'm sure they're getting into the nuts and bolts of the dollars and the percentages and stuff. But I like, for my opinion, Brian, is to roll like a 30,000 foot elevation. So if somebody does have a burning desire in their belly to do this, and they're doing some flips and they're getting some traction, and Isaac Imac well, we've talked about Isaac several times. He's a brother of mine.
Oh, that's cool.
And he did a ton of single family flips, and I think it was number 1 or 2. And you guys might have even been flip flopping on the numbers in Sonoma County during the day. He's building houses as fast as he can now from the fires.
Yeah.
And,
good.
And really 100% solely focused on that. And he has a subdivision and stuff, but I just love focusing on the mentality of guys like you and Isaac and some of the other players that have really had a foothold in that particular piece through the foreclosure process and foreclosure timeframe into now, right? So where do you think the greatest opportunity is in the next 3 to 5 years, seeing what the market's kind of leveling off and doing? We're in fall, basically, of this 7 to 10 year real estate cycle. Winter's coming, right? We don't know what it's going to look like. It's not going to be as bad as 07. But where does the almighty Brian see us going 3 to 5 years in a multifamily sense?
Well, on the multifamily, I think has a lot of runway ahead of it. There's if you look at housing starts across the country are not keeping up with population growth, especially when you factor in migration patterns. And and in the areas where we're buying, like call it Phoenix, Vegas, Texas, Atlanta, Tampa, Florida, Orlando, Research Triangle in North Carolina. All these areas are places where people are moving to, even from other parts of the U.S., like they're moving from California, they're moving from New York, they're moving from, all areas of the Northeast, getting out of the cold. So you've got massive population growth in those areas. You have job growth in those areas. You have income growth in those areas. And those are the big three drivers of multifamily: job growth, income growth, and population growth. And as long as you have those, it's a high level of fundamental support for multifamily. So I think rents are going to continue to rise. I think demand is going to be strong for multifamily. I do think that prices have run up a lot. Cap rates have come down a lot, and some of that has to ease to a certain degree. I get a lot of people ask, like, or they'll make a statement like, "Yeah, I'm waiting for the market to crash so I could get in." And my response is, "Well, good luck."
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that, because first of all, I think that the next economic cycle from a real estate perspective is going to look nothing like the last one. And I also think that even if there is some kind of a correction in real estate, let's say that the prices go down 10%, but if they've gone up 20% from today before they go down 10, what have you really gained? So I don't think that the sitting and waiting on the sidelines is really the right strategy, but I think there's runway left in real estate. I think the next cycle looks like a plateau, a leveling, a breather, a slowdown, what have you. But I don't see the cataclysmic collapse that we witnessed in 2007. It was
a financing fueled thing. It was
unique. I mean, we always want to say that this time it's different, right? Everybody always wants to say that. But I'll tell you, I lived through the 2000 recession. Remember the dot-com bust and the subsequent 2000 recession? It was a big
deal, especially in the Bay Area.
It was a big deal, but I'll tell you what, I was buying, fixing, and reselling flip homes, and I was building new single-family homes, and I had rentals. And during that time, I did not feel the impact of that recession one iota from my real estate. My houses were selling. My houses were rented. We were buying. We didn't feel any impact whatsoever on the properties that I was doing. So, then the next recession, on the other hand, it wipes out prices and brings 70% declines in some areas.
That was a completely different deal. That was an anomaly for 50 years, or
100.
But then again, there's an opportunity in that, right? Or 100, or a lot, everything on record. But again, opportunity, right? The guys that were sitting on a pile of cash at that time had great opportunity.
Oh my gosh, we bought $15 million worth of single family homes in 2011 in the bottom of the market.
Oh my gosh.
We've sold them, and I think our exit price was around $45 million for those rental homes. That was within 5 years. That will never happen again in my lifetime, I do not think.
I agree with that statement 100%. We might see a portionate cyclical of that, but you're absolutely right. And I'm proud of you for taking advantage of that. That was an incredible time. And I knew people very, very small that bought one or two houses and made $1 million in that time frame.
Yes.
Literally buying houses for 300, selling them for 1.2, a few years later.
Yeah, but to your question from earlier, if you were trying to raise money back in those days, it was the best time to buy. But raising money was nearly impossible. We bought those $15 million worth of houses. I could have bought $150 million worth of houses.
With what you had to leverage.
If I could have gotten the capital for it. But we couldn't. We struggled to raise the capital to get what we did. And people said to me, "You're crazy." They said to me, "You're wrong." We said real estate is going to double in 5 years. And they said, "There's no way. You're wrong. And real estate is still declining." And yet what happened? They didn't double. We were wrong. They 2.5x.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say 3 times. I love that story. And it is, hindsight's always 20/20. But so tell me this, and maybe just having a little fun with you, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you're dropped out of a helicopter in Texas. And you don't have any financing, you don't have all these relationships and partners and all that built up. Where do you start?
I don't have my track record either, do I?
You don't. You might have, Brian Burke goes a long ways. That name's worth something, but it ain't worth much in Texas.
Yep. All right.
So walk me through that. What's that look like, honestly? Because you're going to have young entrepreneurs or people reemerging that get fired up from this. And I want to leave them with tangible shit that they can go, okay, this makes sense. They have to be smart in this business plan and this process, but just 30,000 foot elevation. You get dropped into Texas. Texas is a growth area. So you have your jobs, you have income, and you have population growth. They're all coming from California. We know they can afford houses.
Yep.
Right?
Well, it's my first question was, I don't get my track record, right? And you said, no, you don't. And the reason that I asked that question is the track record is the key that unlocks all capital from investors. Without a track record, no one's going to invest in you.
Say that again, Brian.
Yeah. Your track record is the only thing. That is your key to unlock capital from investors. You do not go to an investor and say, "Hey, will you invest money in this great idea that I have?" I don't care what your idea is, whether it's real estate
skin in the game, no equity.
Yeah, if you're inventing the next supercomputer or whatever it is that you're doing, the first thing people are going to ask is, well, what have you done before?
Right.
So you say, I don't get my track record. So that answers my question of what I have to do. So I'm just dropped into Texas. I have no track record. I know the very first thing I have to do is I have to go build one. I have to build a track record. Now, how do I do that when I've just been dropped out of a helicopter and I have no money? Well, I'm probably going to start, now I can say this. The now me can say this. The
Right.
then me would have said, I'm going to go try to figure out how to go find, borrow money or cash advance a credit card or whatever to go
Right.
house. The now me says, I'm going to go partner with someone that's already doing this and needs help. I'm going to go partner with someone that knows what to do or that has a track record or that has capital. And I'm going to become involved with them in some way that I can get some experience and I can build a track record and I can leverage their track record with mine and have them help me propel myself to my destination faster. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to build their track record, even if it's flipping a house or, fixing up a duplex or whatever the case may be, whatever business it is that you're trying to get into. I'm going to do something to show other people that I can produce a result for them so that eventually I can convince people to invest with me and I can leverage the business the way I did this time.
Dude, that's like mic drop. Honestly, that's what I knew was going to show up today on this segment. And I'm super, super stoked that you actually went there with that, because that is the secret sauce, right? I mean, that is, because if not, you're in there like every other Joe, just saying you're an investor and you're trying to get into these things. But so now you've partnered with somebody, you start building a track record. What's that look like in terms of portfolio?
Well, what it has to look like, first of all, is it's got to look like whatever documentation you keep. So if you're building a track record, document it. I have a log sheet of listing every single property I've ever bought. It's like 745 properties long or something like that, but I have every one of them on a sheet. So that, if people say like, what have you done? Look at this.
You're proud of it. You're
absolutely.
Like, oh, by the way, did you learn that from Al Naccioni? Also tell me.
I started before I even met him. So,
okay. Because I was going to give him credit for that, because that's one of the fundamentals he taught me. And when I first got in the business, and Al, I think you'll listen to this, and I apologize if this sounds demeaning. It's not meant to be. But I thought he had the biggest ego on the planet, because he would sit down and they'd be like, okay, I know enough about you. I love you, but how much can we get for a property? And he goes, I'm not done showing you what I'm capable of yet. And he'd go through this thing for 30 minutes of just everything he's done and all his awards and all his accomplishments. And me being a young agent learning from this guy that was the best, I just dismissed it. I didn't give it the value until, honestly, you said this right now, Brian. I didn't realize that he was laying out his street credit. He was laying out his track record that then pacified all their, obstacles and all of their, not, what am I trying to say? They basically, he knocked down the walls of any objections that he was going to get on that particular listing before they came up, before they had a chance to come up.
Yeah. So our business is raising money from high net worth individuals and family offices and, wealthy people invest in our business, right? To acquire real estate. That's our business. So to get someone to make that investment or to write that check, there's a system that I call it. You have to progress through 3 trust curves. And what you're describing there, well, like with Al in his book, I mean, this is what he's doing, and whether he knew it or not, this is what he's doing. So in our business, the trust curves first are people have to trust real estate. And therefore they have to understand they know they want to invest in real estate. They know that real estate can produce this advantage or that advantage or whatever it is for them. So, I'll get income, I'll get appreciation, cash flow, tax benefits, and loan amortization, and I get all these things and that's what I get from real estate. So first of all, you have to get them through that. Now, right. Someone that's sitting in the office of a real estate agent is probably already gotten there, right? And so somebody that calls us and says, we want to invest in a real estate private offering, they've probably already gotten past trust curve number 1. Right. Trust curve number 2 is they have to trust you. Oh. And so that's where, you have to show them, this is what we've done. This is the results we've produced. This is the return that we've projected. And this is the return we've delivered. This is us in 30 years of doing this, never having lost any investor money. Those are the things that we're building that trust curve to say, we're the right people to work with. That's what Al's doing with his book. Here's how I'm going to show you I'm the right guy to work with.
Right.
The third and final trust curve is they have to trust the deal. And that's where you're like, here's this real estate we want to buy. Here's the current rents. Here's where we can take the rents. Here's the renovation plan to get us kind of from where the property is to where it's going. And once they trust that, then they sign the check. Same thing happening in that office, Randy. They already trust real estate. Now they trust Al. Now all Al has to do is show them a property that they like, and they like and trust that property. They buy the property.
I love that analogy, the 3 trust curves. I have to drink my water. I was on that 75-day hard. Did you hear about that?
Oh, I saw your posts on Facebook.
Oh yeah, everybody saw my naked body on Facebook. That's awesome. But it was well deserved and well earned. But I have to carry water around now like I'm a gym rat or something. But I'm just so enjoying this, and I know my viewership's going to enjoy this as well. And hopefully you'll be able to put this out in a way that adds value to people in your arena and in your circle and sphere of influence as well. So now you've got somebody, maybe they've gone to Texas, they've partnered up with somebody, they've laid out some structured track record, if you will. They've focused on maybe a business plan that's got the 3 trust curves. So they're really identifying that. What kind of properties can they expect to get into, or, you in this scenario to begin with? What would you start with? Single family? Would you start with multifamily, 6 to 10 doors, under 4 duplexes? What would you do? So
you're just trying to get into the business, right?
Yeah.
I think you start with whatever it is you can get into. And, people, there's a thing where I get a lot of questions from people that are always like, I want to go buy a 20 unit apartment building. Okay. What have you done before? Well, nothing. Right. So your very first real estate deal, you want to be a 20 unit apartment. Doors. It's like, let's walk this back a minute. So, now certainly if you have the money, it's your cash, go for it. Right. Because I bought a 16 unit. It was probably my, 20th or 30th deal. 40th deal. I don't know, something like that. Yeah. It certainly wasn't my first, but it certainly wasn't anything like now. So, I had no idea what I was doing. I told you, I fumbled around. I was lost. I made bad decisions. Yeah. And I've been doing real estate at that point for 13 years. Right. And so, but it was a new category. It was a new category. It was a bigger one. It was different than what I had done before. So, I think you have to start, you have to be realistic about, where your skill set is, and just say, look, I want to do the kind of the smallest deal that I think I can do, because that's going to teach me skills so that when I make the step up and go to the next one, and I advocate, grow as quickly as you can, and scale. I believe in all those things, but scale at a measured and natural progressive pace, because when you make a mistake, and you're going to, you want to make a mistake. Yeah, that's not life threatening. You want it to be the smallest mistake you can, so that when you go to the next one and that mistake is a little bit bigger, you're more capable of absorbing it. Right. And it doesn't kill you and not take you out of the game. And so you have to just kind of keep doing that, and you build and build and build. Our business grew organically. I started out with a mobile home, and now we've done 3,000 apartment units, and it didn't go from one to the other instantly. This was a 30-year process. Right. That got us there. And I didn't go into multifamily until 13 years after I started. So yeah, and people do want a shortcut, unfortunately. That's they do. There's no shortcuts. They watch, Carlton Sheets on TV, and all of a sudden they're going to invest in 27,000 units for no down. I wanted that. That was what I wanted. I wanted to do that. I had a goal. I said, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. I didn't come anywhere close. I think I probably was by 33, but by 30 I had nothing. I had nothing. Right. And, it was just like, you watch all the late night TV, you see all the goals, you see other people doing stuff, you see me on a podcast, whatever it is, you see something, you say, I want to be that. You just have to know it takes time to get there, and there's no shortcut. And everybody wants to know, they ask me all the time, like, how do I get to where you're at, like, quickly? And it's like, you don't. If you do. That's the wrong question to start with. It's the wrong question, because the answer is, if you do, you won't stay here.
That's true. The grit and all that is what gets you there.
And gives you the longevity. It gives you the foundation that you need to be able to stay here. I can do this for the next 30 years, but if I had gotten here in 2 years, it wouldn't. Now I'd probably be back to working in a grocery store like I did when I was 16.
Yeah, it's not the same. And, I personally, I know your story, but I have way more respect for somebody that's worked through the trenches and has a story like yours, from mobile home to single family to 100 homes a year to then multifamily. Because frankly, when you see it from the outside looking in, and they're like, they just bought 3,000 doors, you're like, oh, they got money. They're coming from trust funds. They got something, right?
Yes.
I love your story. That's why you're here, brother, because I think that brings so much value to the true entrepreneur. You asked how I developed this show and kind of what I'm passionate about. I also have a podcast I'm really fired up about called likeabosspod.com, but it's Like a Boss Pod, right? And it's not how to be a boss and everybody's renting nice cars and standing by them with their pictures and stuff. This is about the fucking grit that it takes to get in and work in a business longer, harder, faster than everybody else to have any kind of success.
Right.
And the thing about that piece is, you could tell I'm getting animated about it. It fires me up. It fires me up as a coach. It fires me up as an entrepreneur. The new generation, and I'm not just lumping together millennials or anything else. That's crap. That's not fair to them, because there are entrepreneurs within that. But I love like Gary Vee, and in some regards, I don't like when he says work 80 hours a week until you die. That's just what you need to do to succeed. I'm a coach, so I have a balanced lifestyle approach that is very integral to me, especially losing a couple people close to me to suicide. And, there's an element to it that life has to happen in this. And I know you're an advocate this. I see your lifestyle and I see what you're passionate about. All the money in the world won't satisfy being depressed or unhappy or whatever. But with that being said, I love the fact that you're accelerating this to a place that re-energizes and it kind of redefines your place in your career now. Am I right?
It does. Yeah. I'm in a completely different spot than 10 years ago. And you
were in a good spot 10 years ago.
I was in a good spot 10 years ago.
It's just look at where you're going to be in 10,
Actually, I was in a good spot like 12 years ago. And then it all went to hell when the market collapsed. And it's like, it was the worst time of my life.
It was very janky.
It completely wiped me out, Randy. I mean, and I had to rebuild. So I've done this twice now. I had to rebuild myself. I don't know how. Somehow we managed to pull this off, where even throughout that deep recession, and it damn near bankrupted me. But I never.
Everybody, Brian.
I know everybody. I never lost $1 of investor money, and I never defaulted on a loan. And to be able to have gotten through that period and be able to say that is something I'm enormously proud of. But
that is your track record.
It is, and I also had to rebuild myself from then to now. And one of the things that I learned through that process is, when you're faced with this prospect that your life is never going to be the same again, you value it so much more. So, and here's a great example. When all the crap happened and the market went to crap in 2006 or 7, and we just started, we were just bleeding bad. I mean, we were like millions in debt and all this stuff. And it's like, we're never again going to be able to go to Maui. And it was like our favorite place to go. We're never going to be able to go to Maui again in our lives. And then, fast forward, like literally from the day we said that, it was less than a year and a half. Not only did we go to Maui, we flew our entire family, my wife's entire family, like 20 people or 27 people, to Maui for us to renew our wedding vows on the island. And we paid for everyone's airfare and their accommodations.
I love that.
And we thought we were never going to get to go there again. And so, now it's like we've just come to this point where we appreciate doing that so much and being able to go to the places we love so much, that having a work-life balance is so important. And, we have to be able to, go to the places we love with the people that we love and do the things that we love to do, while we're building this business that we also love at the same time. Right. And you have to be able to allocate enough time and resources to each of those, or you'll never really truly be happy.
Thank you for saying that, man. It's so true. So, I mean, oh my God, Brian, what a great interview with you. I knew it would be. I have one final question and, kind of an input that I'd like to get from you before we wrap up. Anything that you'd like to add before I ask my last question?
Gosh, you've really touched on a lot of stuff. I've been on a lot of podcasts, and this is the first time I've been on a show like this where I've like got such a history with the person that you bring me back all the way to day one. And it was
likewise, brother.
This was a journey that like took me through the last 30 years in like the last 40 minutes. And it's
literally, I got
a
goosebumps,
really incredible
Brian.
experience.
I'm serious. I got goosebumps.
Yeah, literally. Me too. So it's really exciting. I think one of the coolest things that I look at is when I first started investing in real estate 30 years ago, I never knew if I would be successful or not. I never knew if it would go anywhere or not. And here it is 30 years later, and saying that, we've bought $500 million in real estate is an unbelievable statement for me. This year, I've just finished writing a book. My wife's been telling me for years I should write a book. And I'm always like, I don't know enough to write a book yet.
Oh, man.
I finally felt like I actually know enough to be able to share some of this knowledge with other people. And so I'm really excited about that. And that's going to come out next year. And so
put a plug in. Do you have a name or do you have anything for it yet?
It's just now coming out. I just actually announced this a week ago. It's called The Hands-Off Investor. Nice. And this book is for high net worth investors and people who want to invest in real estate but don't want to do the work. And they want to invest with other people, but they don't know how to find the right people, and they don't know how to analyze the opportunities and avoid mistakes.
I like it.
I'm just trying
That's a big pool of opportunity.
It's a big pool of opportunity,
big
but
pool.
I want to expose all of the dangers that are out there for people who want to invest money with other people in real estate deals, and help them, not make a mistake and lose their shirt. So supposedly that's coming out in the spring. So this is the first time I've ever gotten to actually plug it on a show.
Good for you, man. So last question, but how can people reach you if they want to reach out to you? Do you mind sharing like an Instagram or anything? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, there's a lot of great ways. Our website is praxcap.com. So our company is Praxis Capital. Our website is praxcap.com. Instagram, we're at PraxCap. LinkedIn, we're like at PraxCap. We're pretty much at PraxCap on all those different things. Okay, cool. One of the really cool ways that people find me a lot is on biggerpockets.com, which is a great website that if any of your listeners aren't familiar with, it's like a Facebook for real estate investors. It's a place where people go and they share their stories about their investment journey, or they ask questions about a problem they're having while they're trying to figure out how to deal with a landlord-tenant issue, and other users will chime in with answers. And I participate heavily on that site, just giving people answers and advice to their questions when they're stuck. So it's a great place to find me there as well.
Another beautiful nugget, man. I love it. Well, this has been an absolute joy to me, and I'm excited to ask you this last thing. And it's really just based on what we just talked about. You said you almost failed twice. You really were, the chips were down. You were talking about never going to Maui again. And what came up with me deep in my heart, and I remember getting goosebumps for you telling the story, but tell people how to tap into that inner voice, that grit, that perseverance that has to happen to continue to get through that and succeed. I would love to hear it personally. I know my viewers would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh man, I'll tell you, it's an inner power that you just have to rise up from the, a challenge of adversity. I've always been the type of person that if anybody ever said, no, you can't do that, I was that much more motivated to show them they were freaking wrong.
Right.
And to say, don't tell me I can't do this. I remember when I was in high school and you take a test that says, what career you'd be most apt for, right. And mine came back as like, you could be a farmer. And it's like, nothing against farmers, but it's like, gosh, I would never have thought of that. And you tell me I can't do anything but farming. And it's like,
now it's a $4 trillion industry, if you get what I'm talking about.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, no kidding. Right. And so, it's like, I just always was like, I'm going to show them that, I can do all these things. Yeah. And so, when the economy knocked me down, it was kind of like, no, I'm going to show you that you aren't going to knock me down. I'm going to do this. And it was part, hey, I'm in this for the long haul. there's no way I'm going to start defaulting on loans or lose investor money, because that I'm finished. So there's just that grit and determination to say, I am going to, at any cost, no matter what happens, I am going to persevere through this, and I'm going to use growth as my exit strategy from this depression. And that's exactly what I used. You can crawl into a hole, or you can use growth to grow your way out of it. And growth is the only one of the two that works.
Wow, dude. I think that's a great place to end this call. I love you, and I really love the journey that you've been on, and we've been able to like reenact over the last 45 minutes or so here. And the one takeaway, I got like 7 to 10 takeaways I wrote down, and I'm personally going to go back and watch the show and take notes. So I recommend all the viewers do the same as they start watching and get through this. But the track record really defines you. I think that Texas analogy was a great way for us to look at the first thing that came up to somebody like Brian Burke is your track record defines you. And I think that's a beautiful takeaway. I think that's something that a lot of people can go out and institute into their businesses right away by partner on little stuff. Even if it's a little flip, partner in on it so you can then have the bandwidth to say, hey, I partnered on that particular house and produce an address and produce names, produce a result, and then build on that track record into a massive operation like Mr. Brian Burke you have. Hey, buddy, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Tuesday Titans, we appreciate you very much. And it's now just a couple days after Thanksgiving. Everybody have a great holiday season. But Brian, thank you for being here. And, I just really appreciate you and our friendship.
Yeah, likewise, Randy. Thanks for having me on. I'm really honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Brian. I'll talk to you soon.
You got it.
Bye for now.